Uncle Jeffrey, can you read us a bedtime story, please? Please?
Alright. You guys all tucked in?
Yeah.
You ready?
Yeah.
Alright. Here we go. It's the story of a rich old man, January. He's still a bachelor at 60, but now he plans to marry and he's looking for a beautiful young wife, which is an option for rich old geezers sometimes. See, January was one of those secularists, which means he had no control over his sexual urges. He couldn't say which was better, getting laid or getting paid. He just knew when he was getting one, the other would get away, but then he changed. Whether from religious sensibility or whether he just got thick-headed from senility, I can't say. But suddenly he wanted it. January became a dedicated monogamist instead of a misogynist, treating women like objects. It's funny how our attitudes change with our prospects, yeah. Marriage is a beautiful thing, especially for those who are too old to swing. That's when it's nice to just stay home with your wife instead of chasing waterfalls cause it's cold outside. Take my advice. All you bachelor men, if you want love and happiness and companionship, you need a wife, a woman who will never be impatient. No more rejection and constant humiliation. Or anyway, that's what January would say once he decided he was ready for his wedding day. So he asked his friends to help him find somebody and said, guys, just try to make sure she's under 20. I want sex appeal, not a tough old cow. I want some tender veal instead of know-how. I want a woman I can mold right now with my own hands, not a prefab 30-year-old. I want some warm wax. Well, soon a young girl caught his fancy and he said he had to have her if he wanted to be happy. And I'll skip the details of how they got engaged, except just to say rich men get the females. The girl that he chose was named May, a pretty 18-year-old with a baby face. And when the wedding day came, the pairing was gorgeous. They looked like Callista Flockhart and Harrison Ford, if Callista was more like Miley Cyrus' age. Yeah, everyone agreed that the bride was a babe, and January just watched her with lust in his eyes, and all he really wanted was to bust in her thighs. But first he had to get through the vows and the feast and the speeches, while suppressing his eagerness. But when the last guest in the villa went home, he took his bride to bed. She lay as still as a stone as he caressed her and said, sorry I have to hurt you, but the church says sex within marriage is a virtue. And now that we're husband and wife, I can make tonight last as long as I like. And in spite of his age, January stayed solid, and several long hours of unpleasantness followed. And in the morning, instead of passing out, he sat up in bed singing and laughing out loud. And she just watched him like, ew, he's crazy old. The wrinkles on his neck looked like the skin of a baby mole, and so on. And January singing his verses with his wife lying next to him, thinking he's worthless. So we'll just leave May in bed with her disappointment, and I'll talk about the fly in the ointment. January had an assistant named Damien. He was at the wedding, yeah, he was one of his favorites. But Damien couldn't even enjoy the day because Damien had eyes only for May. But he knew he couldn't tell her cause his boss was jealous, and January had sway like the Rockefellers. So he thought to himself that the sure way to get her was to write the girl a note. Oh yes, a love letter. When he finished the note, like a sneaky sneak, Damien hid it somewhere she would find it secretly, and he signed his name to it. He was taking his chances, cause a young man's likelihood of mating advances by taking risks. That's how human nature is, cause the girls love a guy if he's dangerous. And when May found the note, she read it and smiled, cause he was kinda sweet. Plus it was written with style, and it said, P.S. I'm dead if you tell your husband. So she ripped it into 50 little pieces and flushed it. Well, after that, things changed. Damien and May played the winking game, but they couldn't follow through cause there was a jealous guy in the mix. January kept a watchful eye on his chick. And the months passed by, but January was old. He was slowly going blind, which increased Damien's chances of penetration. Thank goodness for advanced macular degeneration. And if January was jealous before, well, his blindness amplified it just a little bit more. He was so afraid to find his wife in a tryst that he kept one hand at all times on her wrist with no exceptions. Not even for toilet breaks. While she peed, he would hover beside her like a coiled snake guarding its eggs. But his problem wasn't solved, cause her lack of freedom just increased her resolve. And pretty soon, opportunity knocked, cause January liked to take afternoon walks in the garden, holding May by the elbow. He didn't trust her for a second on her own, hell no. The garden was surrounded by a wall with a locked gate. He wanted privacy to exercise his prostate with May when he pleased in a grove of trees, and a chain around his neck held the only key. But January slept like a corpse after strolls, so May copied the key in a warm wax mold when he was passed out, and passed it out the window to Damien, along with a note containing info on what he should do and how long